Family, Mary Dwelly was one of Andrew Porter's daughters. And they didn't even live around here. The whole Porter family moved over to Robertson County for about 4 years in the 1870s, and that's where she met her husband, and they stayed there, and then the rest of the Porters moved back here. But I talked to two old ladies that were neighbors of the Dwellys years ago, and they shared this story about Mary Dwelly, and it happened at church. I thought that'd be a good one to start out with, because I got another one here that's not quite as good.
By good, do you mean juicy?
No, you'll find out. I might let you read that one, Vicki. I don't know if you will or not.
He gives me the embarrassing one.
Yeah, Sonia, pass this over to Vicki so she can be warming up on it. See if she wants to read
At least
it.
it's short.
Yeah, it's a short one.
You can say a lot of bad things in a short.
You want to do that one after this one? You can let me know.
I haven't read it yet. I'll let you know.
Okay, let me know. Okay, so these two ladies, Gertrude says they were neighbors when we lived on the farm, and she says Mary was a very large woman, wasn't she, Lucy? I was talking to these two older ladies that day, and Gertrude says, yeah, she remembers her well. Oh yeah, she was big and fat, Lucy said. So Lucy says, oh yeah, and she was a Methodist. We used to go to church, you know, Methodists, they all shouted. She would get up and she seemed as light on her feet, and she would just shout around. And then Gertrude said, it's kind of strange how she could do that, you know. She would get happy, as Lucy said, and then she would jump up and down, and she would whirl around, and it seemed to me like she would sit down and she would whirl. And Lucy said, one time I was a little brat. I was kind of fussing and crying, and I was wanting to go home, and Mother said she looked at me, meaning Mary Dwelly looked at her, and thought, well, I could just spank you. And so when Mary got to shouting, she came by, and she was swinging her hand, and boy, she came over and slapped me upside of the face. And Mom said she always knowed she'd give it to me because I was crying and wanted to go home, you know, in church. So, Mary Dwelly. So, Vicki, what do you think? You want to read that one?
Not the way it's written. I'd have to alter it.
Well, you could beep it out. We'll guess. You want to do that?
I think Sonia would like to read it.
Okay.
I won't bleep the words out though.
I know you won't. That's why you ought to read it.
I'm just kidding.
So the story Sonia's reading about is again about George Dwelly and Alex Porter.
You've got to be kidding me.
That's what I said.
So right here's Alex and here's George. George would come over and visit sometimes. Here's Kate, Alex's third wife. Here's Alex's brother John Porter. Here's Went
more than
Porter,
once.
Alex's son, and some of the
It's all
family.
throughout.
And so this story is about George Dwelly
See,
and
what
his
can we use for
brother-in-law
that
Alex
word?
Porter.
Runs.
Your grandpa. Your grandpa. So and I think Sonia's
That's what
getting
I
ready to
was
read this
thinking.
short story. Now, this story was told to me by Everett Porter, Alex's son Everett.
This is a case of the runs. That's a word she told me to use.
That's not what he said, but
Yeah.
we're changing it.
Everett said, I've just seen Aunt Mary Dwelly and Aunt Martha Day. JC, Aunt Mary Dwelly was a big woman, wasn't she? Everett, yeah. And Aunt Martha, a little poor woman. Aunt Martha Day and Aunt Mary Dwelly. Old George Dwelly, he was big. Anyhow, 6 foot, and I believe he was over that. Him and Pa had been somewhere, they growed up kind of together. He ate a big bunch of apples. I guess they was green. It gave him the runs. Pa said he was hitting it about every fence corner. We used to have old crooked rail fence, he said. I think I've kind of got a touch of the runs. Pa told him, if that's just a touch, I'd hate to see the real runs. JC said, who was that? My daddy, Alex Porter, told him, George Dwelly, his brother-in-law, he said he had a touch of it.
Sonia, I'm proud of you.
Well, Vicki had to give me a word to use.
It was was a collaboration.
You didn't
Yes.
use no dirty words, did you?
Yeah.
It was dirty enough without it.
I tell you, Everett used it straight out, didn't he?
Yeah.
He did.
According to what's written on there, he did.